Hey guys, welcome to Learn Python the Hard Way. Today we're going to focus on exercise 15, reading files. As always, you can find the link to the current chapter in the description below. This is part of the paid version of the book. If you don't have the paid version, simply follow along with the video. So in the previous exercise, we took a look at working with command line arguments using argv and also working with input. And now we're going to go one step further and starting to learn about how we can read from a file. So this exercise, there's a lot of stuff going on. So we should do this exercise really carefully and remember to always check if our output matches with the output in the book here. And we need to be especially careful because when we work with files, it's very easy to overwrite some information in our files or erase it. So let's be extra careful. So in this exercise, we're going to write two files. One is our regular Python script that we will run, and the other is then named here exercise 15 sample.txt. So it's a regular text file. And that text file is going to contain this kind of content here. So for right now, let's just get started and write out this text file. And then next, we're going to take a look at the Python script, which we're going to write. And for now, I'm just going to hop over into the terminal and use Visual Studio Code to create a new text file. So let's call that exercise 15 sample.txt, and it ends in txt, so it's a text file. It's not a Python script. Now in our text file, we're just going to type in the same content as here described in the book. So these are basically just 3 rows of text. And we're just going to save that. And just for context, I created that text file in the directory which we created in one of the previous exercises where we store all the exercise files and the related information. Alright, so since we saved this here, what we want to do is to open that file in our script and then print it out. But what we don't want to do is to basically hard code the name of that file, the text file, into our script. And hard coding means that we are putting some information that should come from the user as a string directly in our source code. So we would we would directly type out exercise 15 underscore sample.txt, and that's not what we want to do. That's bad because we want it to load other files later, right? So we want to maybe use it with some other text files. And the solution for that is to use argv or input, which we learned about in the previous video, to ask the user what file to open instead of hard coding the file's name. So let's get started by actually typing out the exercise file, the exercise 15 Python file, and then follow along. So exercise 15.py, again, we are going to open that in Visual Studio Code, which is why we type out code space and then exercise 15.py. And in this newly opened Python file, we start by importing argv, which allows us to work with command line arguments from the sys module here, so from the system module. And next we're going to take the input that we collect from argv, and then we're going to assign that to 2 variables. So the first one is the script name, so it would typically be exercise 15.py, and the second one is then the file name, which would in our case be exercise 15 underscore sample.txt for the text file that we actually want to assign to it. And again, we're going to set that to argv. So argv, we're going to provide those 2 arguments and they're going to be assigned to those 2 variables. Next, let's create a new text variable, txt, And here we're going to use the file, the open command, followed by the file name, again, which matches here the file name variable we created before. And from here, let's print out using printf. Here's your file. Then we provide the file name, the colon. And next we say print txt, so the file that we opened before, and we're calling read on it. So this way we can read the content of this file that we opened, which we assigned to the txt variable. And next, let's ask the user to type the file name again. And here we ask for the input of the user file again. So the difference here is, of course, that we use the input function now instead of previously using the command line argument. So that is, while the script is running, we're asking for that. And then we create a new variable txt again, and we open file again. Print txt again dot read. So we're basically reading the file, which ideally should be the same file, one more time. Alright, so since there's quite a lot of new syntax, let's take a look at some of the details. So lines 1 and 3 both use argv to get a file name. Yeah, so we basically import argv from the system module, and then we use the command line arguments provided when we execute the program with argv, and we assign that to the script and the file name variable. Next, in line 5, we use a new command open here, and right now we are going to run pydoc open, which we learned about in, I think, in the chapter 12, exercise 12, which is very helpful to basically look up some documentation directly here from the terminal. So let's open pydoc open, and we can see that is the syntax. So we provide the name and then optional, like some additional arguments, for example, the mode, and that opens a file using the file type and returns a file object. That's the preferred way to open a file. Notice how, like your own scripts and input, it takes a parameter and returns a value you can set to your own variable. You just open the file, yeah, and we can see that here. So it's going to return a file object and it takes a name. In line 7 here, we print out a little message. Here's your file name. But on line 8, we have something very new and exciting. We call a function on txt named read, which we see here. What you get back from open is a file here, and it is also it also has commands you can give it. You give a file a command by using the dot or period, the name of the command, and parameters, just like with open and input. The difference is that txt.read says, hey txt, do your read command with no parameters. Yeah, so we call that here txt.read. The remainder of the file is more of the same, but we'll leave the analysis to you in the study tools. All right. So here's a warning, pay attention. I said pay attention. You have been running scripts with just the name of the script, but now you are using argv. Now that you're using argv, you have to add arguments. Look at the very first line of the example below, and you will see I do python space exercise15.py space exercise15 underscore sample.txt to run it. See the extra argument exercise15 underscore sample.txt after the exercise15.py script name. If you do not type that, you will get an error, so pay attention. All right, so let's be very careful and open the terminal one more time. And now we're gonna execute our file using Python 3.6, or we can just use Python 3, which is going to use the latest version of Python, followed by the name of the Python script or file. And then we're going to add exercise15 sample.txt. And now first of all, we're going to, it prints out, here's your file name, and this is the file name we provided here. It's printed out. And after that, we print out basically the context of the txt file which we opened up here. So the text file has been opened, and now we are reading it. And this is the context here. This is stuff I typed out into a file. It's really cool stuff, lots and lots of fun to have in here. So that's basically the same content that we typed out here initially when we defined our file. And now it's asking us to type the file name again using, and that's here the section of the input method. So we have that greater than sign and a space character. And now again, we can just type in exercise 15 underscore sample.txt. And now it's, because we are again opening the file, text file, we are then printing it. It's basically printing the same information again, which we opened and printed here using the command line arguments. Okay, so that's the main exercise. Let's take a look at the study rules. There's a big jump, so be sure to do the study rule as best as you can before moving on. All right, the first one is above each line, write out in English what that line does. So let's get started at the very top. So what we do here is we say we import argv from the sys module. Next, here we are getting the argv command line arguments. When executing or when running the file, and assigning it to 2 variables. All right. Next, what we do here is we open the file using the file name, which we again got from the command line arguments, and assign it to a variable. Next, we print out the file name, and after that we print out the content of the opened file using read. And we are calling read on the txt opened text file where we stored the information. After that, we of course print out the command, and so we print the text here to type the file name again. So print out instructions and ask for user input using input, the input method. And then we basically repeat that. So we basically store the information again. So we can basically copy this here. We open the file using the file name and assign it to a variable. And then we print out this time. We don't print out the file name, so we can remove that. So we print out the content of the open file using read one more time. All right, that was this first study drill. The next one is, if you're not sure, ask someone for help or search online many times, searching for Python 3.6, and then whatever we search for will find the answers of what the thing does in Python. Try searching for Python 3.6 open. All right, so let's do that. So here the first hit is actually the Python documentation. So here we find the built-in functions of Python, and they should be ordered alphabetically. Here we have the open function, and here we see the information: open file and return a corresponding file object, and some additional information, some arguments we can provide, and so on and so forth. All right, let's go back. I used the word commands here, but commands are also called functions and methods. You will learn about functions and methods later in the book. All right. Get rid of lines 10 to 15 where you use input and run the script again. All right, so the line numbering has changed a little bit since we added the comments in here, but what we should get rid of is basically the input statement here, so we can just basically remove this section here. Let's save this, clear the screen by pressing Ctrl L, and then running the file one more time. And you can always press the up key. That will show the last command. So we can type this again, and now it's just going to print out the content of the file here, and then basically stop since we are not asking for input. Use only input and try the script that way. Why is one way of getting the file name better than another? All right, so let's undo the deletion here. And now this time we are basically gonna get rid of this here, and I'm just gonna comment that out temporarily. Head over back to the terminal and run this, and this time I'm just not going to provide the file name yet. And now it's asking us to provide the file name. So here we can now say exercise 15 underscore sample.txt, and then it's typing that out. All right, so that's the other way we can go. Instead of providing the command line argument, we can just directly use the input. Why is one way of getting the file name better than another? I think it really depends on the use case. So if we want to quickly execute a file, then using the input method just basically provides a little, like an extra step that we don't really need. We could just use the command line argument and type in the file name directly when we execute the file. So in that case, it might be a lot easier. In another scenario, we may want to basically ask a user for a file name based on some condition, for example, in our script. In that case, it definitely makes sense to use the input command instead, or input function instead. And so it really depends on the specific use case. So let's uncomment that one more time. Start Python 3.6 and start the Python 3 shell, and use open from the prompt just like in this program. Notice how you can open files and read on them from within Python 3.6. All right, so let's do that. So we're going to switch over to the Python shell or Python idle by typing in Python 3 or the specific version and pressing enter. And now we can basically say we want to call open from here. So we can just basically execute the same command as we did up here. So txt or whatever the variable name would be. We can also just call it file. It should be equal to open, and then we provide the file name. Since we didn't store that in a variable here yet, let me type it out. Exercise 15 underscore sample.txt. And it appears to have some issues with that. That doesn't seem to work actually. Let me just reopen that with Python 3 here. let's see if I maybe mistyped this. So we have here the different files, and this is exercise 15 sample.txt. Alright, so let's run Python 3.6 again. And let's say txt equals open. Alright, yeah, I forgot to enter quotation marks around it. That's of course important to do that. And then we can now say txt.read. And now it's basically printing that out. And here it's using the \n character to symbolize that we are using a new line in here. So it's really important when we use open to provide the file name as a string. Otherwise, it will be evaluated as a variable, which of course doesn't exist for that. So that's very handy. We can run that directly within the Python shell, in the Python idle environment, and try, for example, something out from here. All right, the last study drill here is the following. Have your script also call close on the txt and txt again variables. It's important to close files when you're done with them. All right, so if we go back here, once we print out the text file that we read here, we can then say txt.close. Just let's add a comment, close txt file. And let's do the same down here. So we close the file again, and this time we're going to call that on txt again, which we basically is the variable which we assigned to the open file here. So let's call close one more time and save. And just to be safe, let's run this again. Yeah, so that seems to work properly, and of course we can enter the file name again. So here we have exercise 15 _ sample.txt. Alright, so that still works as expected, and it's important to close those files so that we don't use up too much memory. Let's take a look at the common student questions. The first one is, does txt equals open file name return the contents of the file? No, it actually doesn't. It makes something called a file object. You can think of a file like an old tape drive that you saw on mainframe computers in the 1950s, or even like a DVD player from today. You can move around inside them and then read them, but the DVD player is not the DVD, the same way that the file is not the file's contents. Right, so therefore we took that extra step. We opened the file and we assigned it to txt, so that's the file object, and then that's basically what we work with. I can't type code into terminal PowerShell like you say in study drill 7. Okay, right, that's basically what we did here. So to do that, we should type out Python 3.6 and press enter. And now we are in the Python shell with the version number of 3.6.7 here, and we can execute commands. And to get out of that, we type out quit and press enter, and then we are back in the regular terminal view here. Why is there no error when we open the file twice? Python will not restrict you from opening a file more than once, and sometimes this is necessary. Alright, so we can open 2 files without closing the previous file first, and that's allowed. What does from sys import argv mean? For now, just understand that sys is a package or module, and this phrase just says to get the argv feature from that package. You'll learn more about these later. Okay. And finally, I put the name of the file in as script exercise 15 _ sample.txt equals argv, but it doesn't work. No, that's not how you do it. Make the code exactly like mine, then run it from the command line the exact same way I do. You don't put the names of files in, you let Python put the name in. Right, that's what we did here. We had the script variable and the file name variable, and we assigned that to argv instead of providing the name here. And then once we run that from the terminal here, this is where we enter the specific file name, which is then assigned to the file name variable, and from there the next steps are taken. We can work with it. Alright, and that's it with exercise 15, and see you guys in the next video with exercise 16.